This may be controversial, but some experts say it's actually a better investment to rent instead of buy.
I made more money renting than I would have by buying a house.
We have to get over these money myths that you can't build wealth if you rent where you live.
I keep telling you guys, homes are a terrible investment.
You're spending more money owning the home than you could just pay renting it.
Everyone can buy a house, so the returns there aren't going to be huge.
If you're buying a house because you think it's going to be a good financial investment, stop.
But is that right? They never break down the actual numbers, so I wanted to see if what they are saying is true or not. I compiled data from top mortgage analysts, government housing reports, Federal Reserve economic studies, and investment firms to finally settle this debate once and for all. I bet you don't actually understand that it's significantly more expensive per month for you to own a house than it is to rent in 2025. So the experts are right about that. But does that mean it's actually a better idea for you to rent a home? Well, no, but not for the reasons that you may think. If you want to buy a house, do not do it until you watch this video. Because renting is not only cheaper on paper, but also better to build wealth, despite everything you've been told your entire life. However, there's a catch. Because if you rent but don't do what I'm about to tell you, you might as well light your money on fire. You'll end up spending hundreds of thousands of dollars that you will never recover, keeping you poor forever. Because if you are a homeowner, your median net worth is actually 40 times higher than if you rented. So why would I still say it's technically better for you to rent? It's because if you rent, you are making one catastrophic mistake that's keeping you poor. Hey guys, my name's Andy Coleman. I've made millions of dollars in the real estate market, and I have absolutely nothing to sell you today. I've spent years researching this, so I feel as if it's my duty to set the record straight to keep you from getting bamboozled by these idiots on the news that have no clue what they're talking about. Okay, let's dive right into the actual numbers, which I'll round up to make it a little easier for you to understand. Let's say you were to buy a house right now. The average American puts 15% down on their home. Pay extra attention to that because everything I'm about to tell you all comes down to what you can do with that 15% down payment. It's this opportunity cost that makes it a better investment strategy to rent instead of own. But only if you use that 15% or however much you put down in a very specific way. However, there's still a massive advantage when you own a house. But you need to know where your money is actually going every month, because trust me when I say this, it's not going where you think. That's because you've been lied to about the true cost to own a home. I'm willing to bet my last dollar that by the end of this video, whatever preconceived notion you have on the housing market will be flipped upside down. Right now, the total average monthly rent across all 50 states is $1,850 per month, while the total average monthly mortgage payment is $2,300. That means you're paying $450 less per month to rent the same house as you would if you bought it. Historically, it used to be cheaper to own a house than it was to rent, but as you can see, that's not the case anymore. But you might think that an extra $450 a month is well worth the cost to own a house, right? Unfortunately, that mortgage payment doesn't cover everything you'll actually be paying over time when you own a home. If you were to buy a home today at the national average price of about $420,000, you would want a down payment of about 15%, which is about $63,000. That's already a significant chunk of cash that you need up front. But you can get away with only putting 3.5% down, which I'll discuss the pros and cons of in a little bit. But first, let's look at the real cost for you to own a home over 30 years. Your loan amount would be $356,000 on a $420,000 average home. But with today's relatively high interest rates, around 7.25%, your total mortgage payments over those 30 years, it will be about $872,000. But that's just the start of your actual costs. Property taxes alone will run you $138,000 over that time. Homeowners insurance, another $36,000, which is being extremely generous. Plus, there's something most people don't even think about: maintenance. Over 30 years, that adds up to $125,000. That means the total real cost for you to own an average house in America isn't just the $420,000 purchase price that you were told. I wish it were that simple. Instead, it's about $1.173 million. That means you'll be paying about 3 times the actual purchase price of your home. But let's put this into perspective on a monthly basis. When you include everything, if you want to own an average house in America, you'll be paying about $32.50 per month. That's a massive jump compared to the national average rent, which is just $18.50 a month. That means you'll pay an extra $1,400 per month to own versus rent. Keep in mind, this will change per state, which I'll go over later. So if your rent is a little bit higher, don't worry, I got you covered. So at face value, renting is clearly cheaper for you per month. But that's not the whole story, because now you have to ask yourself, if renting is that much cheaper per month, why do homeowners have a net worth that's 40 times higher than renters? This is where things start to get really interesting. Before I show you how renting will make you significantly more money, let's break down what we just went over. Because I know I just threw a lot of numbers at you without explaining what it all means. Prior to the last 5 minutes, you might have assumed your monthly mortgage payment covers everything. But as I showed you, it doesn't. Your mortgage is made up of both principal and interest. But for the first several years, most of what you're paying isn't even going towards your home. In the first year alone, you'll pay $25,000 in interest, but only $3,400 towards the actual loan. Even after 10 years, over $20,000 per year will still be going to interest before you even start making a dent in the principal. That's called amortization. This is why so many of you homeowners feel like you're not getting ahead, because for the first decade, you aren't. Then add property taxes, homeowners insurance, maintenance, then suddenly your real cost of home ownership is way higher than you thought. This is why the true cost of owning a home isn't just the purchase price. It's nearly 3 times more when you add up all the expenses over 30 years. But if it's so expensive, why do homeowners still end up with so much more wealth than renters? That's exactly what we're gonna answer next, because I will show you why that's the opposite of what it should be if you just do this one simple thing. Remember that 15% down payment I told you not to forget about? Instead of using that 15%, which was $63,000, as a down payment on a house, you invest it in the stock market while you rent. Let me explain how this works, because this will make perfect sense in a moment. But you'll be shocked at the end result when I show you the actual breakdown. If you take that $63,000, but instead put it into Vanguard's VOO, which tracks the S&P 500, that money would grow exponentially. You can invest it into any index fund that you want, but VOO has averaged 14.61% annual returns since its inception. I don't know about you, but that sounds pretty good to me. After 30 years, that single investment would turn into $3,223,000, all while you sit back and do nothing. However, since you're renting, you still need to factor in the cost of rent. But here's what you probably forgot. Rent doesn't stay the same every year. The total amount you would have to spend on rent over 30 years at an average cost of about $1,850 per month, there's a 3% yearly increase on that. It actually amounts to $897,000. But if you're thinking, well, I spend $3,000 a month or more on rent, I'll even show you what the math adds up to with the higher rent price in a moment. But even after subtracting the cost of rent, you'd still walk away with $2,325,000 in pure profit. Now, let's compare that to buying a house instead. If you use that $63,000 down payment to buy a $420,000 home, it'll be worth only $1,483,000 in 30 years, because your house will appreciate by 4.4% per year. However, remember the total cost of owning that home, including the mortgage payment, property taxes, insurance, and maintenance? That adds up to an unbelievable $1,173,000 over that same 30-year period, as I broke down earlier. This means that if you own a home, the total profit you'd make after all the expenses is only $310,000. But what if your rent was way higher than $1,850 a month? Is it gonna make up the difference? Nope, not at all. Let's say it's $3,000 a month for your rent. With a 3% yearly increase, your total rent paid would be $1,453,000 over 30 years. Even in this case, renting plus investing in an index fund would still leave you with a net profit of $1,769,000, which is still nearly 5.7 times higher than buying a home. So you can see, it's not even close to comparable, no matter what your rent cost is per month. To answer the question, how is renting the better investment instead of owning? Renting your home but investing the down payment in an index fund will net you anywhere from 5 to 7 times more profit in the long run. While using that down payment to buy your home, plus the total cost over time, is only going to net you about $310,000 in profit. Even if your rent is even higher than that, or the house you buy is much more expensive, it's still not even close. But now, if you're like me, you must be thinking, holy cow, why hasn't anyone told me this before? Yet, I'm going to explain why owning a home is still the better move for you if you answer this one question. That's what I'm going to break down for you next, so don't go anywhere because this is where it all comes together. How much do you value owning your own house? That's the one question you have to answer. Yes, you just saw that it's a significantly smarter financial move to rent a house and invest the down payment. But remember, the average renter is still 40 times poorer than the average homeowner. Why is that based on all the data that we just went over? It's because you, the average renter, does not do this one thing. That's investing the down payment in an index fund. This is exactly why the standard belief is that if you rent, you're gonna be poor forever. When you own a house, you are forced to invest every single month. You don't have a choice. You have to pay your mortgage, which in turn builds equity in your home. No, it won't make you nearly as much money as investing in an index fund and renting, but let's be real, how many of you are actually going to do that? Most of you renters won't. The numbers prove it. Owning a house is a forced investment. Your money is locked away, preventing you from making bad financial decisions. Because if you rent, yes, on paper, you're gonna pay a lot less per month. You won't have that huge down payment up front, but what are you actually going to do with all that extra money? Do you really think you're going to invest it? The data says no. You're going to blow it going out to eat on unnecessary expenses like clothes, maybe buying an overpriced car, everything except investing it. That's the real reason most renters don't build wealth. But here's where it gets even deeper. You can't put a price tag on the peace of mind that comes with owning a home. What if your landlord decides to sell their property? Suddenly, you're forced to leave, even if you don't want to. What's that added security worth to you? If or when you have kids, having a stable environment for them to grow up in, that means something. You'll build memories in a home you own. A rental, that's just a place you'll probably outgrow or get forced out of in a couple years, especially if you live in an apartment complex. You have to watch how much noise you make, follow management rules. You can't fully live the life that you want. Yes, owning a house is more expensive than renting. There's no debate about that after everything that we just went over. But is life only about the bottom dollar? I don't think so. I'm starting to guess that you don't either. So ask yourself, if you want a stable environment, a home for you and your family that you can cherish for years, what's that worth to you? Is it worth the 5 times more money you'd make by renting plus investing? For me, not anymore. I've been renting for a while now because I knew all of this, but I'm starting a family, so it's no longer just about the money for me. If you're like me in this stage of your life, then maybe it's time to start thinking about how you can buy a home. But that's for another video for another day. I hope you enjoyed my breakdown of why renting is unquestionably the better financial investment, but also why I still think owning your own home is the better move if you ask yourself the right question. What is owning a house worth to you?